Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing PMQs as I usually do, focusing very much and exclusively, in fact, on the 6 questions that Keir Starmer for Labour as leader of the opposition gets, and Ian Blackford of the SNP as the leader of the second largest opposition party in Parliament gets as well. And it was very much a tale of two halves. The first part of it was very much like a functioning Parliament would work. And then the rest of it was like a Boris Johnson Parliament would work. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, for the first few questions, I wasn't really sure what I was watching because it all seemed perfectly fine, perfectly civil. Starmer was asking his questions, the Prime Minister was answering them, not wholly satisfactorily, but he was answering them. And I thought, what's going on here? This is almost like sometimes in the old days, because here's the thing, particularly I think in British politics, there is always a big difference. The two largest parties have been for all my life, Labour and the Conservatives. You know, one is right wing, one is left wing. This isn't the same in all countries. Sometimes you've just got two right wing parties, for example, or a centrist party and a right wing party. Here you've got a left wing party and a right wing party that covers, a large part of the spectrum. So they're going to have a lot of differences. I think as a result of that, there's too many people in the UK you'll see the phrase, oh, the job of opposition is to oppose. No, it's not. The job of the leader of the opposition is to form a government. Now that often will mean, of course, you criticise the government. That's not always the same thing as oppose. Now you generally do get a lot of opposition between Labour and the Conservatives because they have so many different core values. But there are some things that are just fundamentally agreed to be right or wrong. A lot of the questions were about the news of the vaccine, how good news it is going to be, how we're going to roll it out and so on. This is demonstrably good news, and the first few questions reflected this. There wasn't a lot of needling. In fact, with all of the questions from Starmer, and it has to be said, Ian Blackford, they actually should have been a breeze for Boris Johnson. It was like a holiday for him. Dead easy for him to answer them. Dead easy. And yet he couldn't help himself, could he? He couldn't help try and needle with a bit of party politics. But there we go. First question. I'll go through the first few quite quickly because, as I say, they were relatively straightforward. They both welcomed the licensing of the Pfizer vaccine. Boris Johnson refused to be drawn in on what the rest of his some of his cabinet colleagues and other Conservative MPs were talking about. But I'm going to do a video on that next. But Starmer turned his attention to the priority list. So we're obviously not going to vaccinate everyone all at once. In fact, we don't have enough doses to do it anyway. So what's the priority list? Who's getting done first, Prime Minister? So that's what he asked. Who do you expect to get the vaccine next week? He noted that we're getting 800,000 in the first instance because there's 2 doses. That's 400,000 each. Now, Johnson didn't pull him up on that. I might have done. I might have pointed out that, yes, there are 2 doses, but as those 2 doses are taken 4 weeks apart, you could actually, if we had the capacity, I don't know how many people the NHS can vaccinate in 1 week, but if we had the capacity to vaccinate 800,000, we could do 800,000 because by the time the second dose was needed by that first lot, we'd have had more delivered. But what the Prime Minister answered, again, perfectly reasonable answer, no problem. He said, elderly adults over 80 in care homes, followed by their carers, then frontline workers, then those over 75 years of age, those over 70 years of age, and then the clinically extremely vulnerable individuals. And then he said, there's a list of priorities after that, which MPs can read, but he believes represents common sense. And I thought, it was going so well. Up to that point, I was thinking, this is nice. Dear, why did he have to say common sense? I mean, it was British common sense that was going to stop us having a second wave. I'm not sure his continued use of that term is giving much confidence. And then he made the point, which again, I'll say, it's his fault we need to be in this position. But at the same time, we are in this position. It's like you always say, okay, you messed up. We are where we are. What's the correct course of action? He then emphasised the fact that the vaccine was very, very good news. But it wasn't the end of the struggle. He's absolutely desperate to stop people being complacent, thinking, the vaccine's here now, so I can just do whatever. No, we can't. The vaccine will not stop a third wave. It will not deal with a third wave if we get a third wave coming. So that he has to do that. Yes, the fact that he's having to do that so desperately is because the message from the start has not been clear simple and consistent, and that is his fault. But we are where we are. So then Starmer, for his second one, then referenced the top two in that priority list, those over 18 care homes and their carers. And he said, I'm not criticising that list in the slightest. He says, but it's obvious that that represents more than 400,000 people. And, and that's all we've got confirmed as coming in the first instance. So then he talked about, obviously, the anxiety of people who'd be in those groups. So people will be thinking, oh, good, I'm going to be one of the first to get the vaccine. But of course they won't, because there's more people in that top priority group than there are doses available at the moment. There'll be more coming. So he says, so when does the Prime Minister anticipate that all of the people in those top two priority groups would be vaccinated? To which then Boris Johnson, he couldn't give an answer there. I don't know whether it's reasonable or not. Again, this is something they've supposedly been planning since April. So I'm not quite sure why he can't give an answer to that. But I'm not a public health expert. I've certainly never been involved in the logistics of vaccination rollouts. Maybe he does know, and it maybe sounds not that impressive, he didn't want to say. But what he actually said was that people shouldn't get their hopes up about the speed of the rollout. He said that we are expecting several million doses of this vaccine to be delivered by the end of the year, which is fairly handy because after the end of this year, we've got Brexit troubles, haven't we? And then he said we'd be rolling it out as quickly as possible after that. Now, I will draw people's attention to the fact that we've ordered 40 million doses from Pfizer. I don't know over what period of time that is. It's because other people have ordered them as well. I don't know when we'd have got the 40 million, but it has to be borne in mind, I did this in a video earlier, we only have cold storage for 5 million at once. So we can't he's talking about taking delivery of several million before the end of the year. We can't take delivery of more than 5 million unless we can roll it out pretty quickly. And then again, he used his answer to emphasise the need to respect the tiering system, to manage things until the program's been rolled out properly. Again, can't fault that. Up to this point, I'm not impressed with his answers, but the tone of it all is what you want. It gives the impression that politicians are pulling together. Good. So then Starmer said, look, okay, on your plans for care homes then. And he noted that the Welsh government had raised some practical concerns, because it's not just a case of we've got the vaccines in the country, send it out to distribution centres, get GPs to organise that. Obviously, this particular vaccine has to be stored at minus 70 degrees Celsius. And he said, look, this is going to be a problem to which the solution is going to have to be come up with involving all 4 nations in the UK. So he said, in the spirit of trying to work together here, what particular plan does the government have in getting the vaccine safely to the care homes where they will be needed? To which Johnson acknowledged the logistical challenges. He acknowledged that that's a good question. He says, we're working with all devolved administrations on this. He said, the NHS will be the lead on this one. Now, here's the thing. I mean, we know that they call the tracing app the NHS tracing app, and they talk about NHS this, that and the other, when we know that the NHS have limited input, and Public Health England in general have limited input. There's a lot of private companies involved in various bits of our programme in general. However, I will say this. The thing that might give me some hope for the vaccine rollout is, I don't want to say this, but surely they can't just chuck out random contracts for distributing the vaccine to neighbours, friends and family. Not this time. Surely the NHS has to genuinely take the lead on this one. So that gives you a bit more hope. But, he also talked about the AstraZeneca vaccine becoming available soon. I don't think that one does have to be stored at minus 70. And again, I was thinking at this point, all very good, and you're wondering who's going to crack first. Because I knew it was coming. There was no way it was just going to be an amicable PMQs. I thought, who's going to crack first? Obviously, it was Boris Johnson. Because then what he did, he tried to have a little dig. He called on Starmer to not only thank the people who produced the vaccine, but also the task force, the vaccine task force, which of course is run by a clueless wife of a Tory MP. To which Starmer gave the perfect politician's answer. He said, I pay tribute to everyone who got us this far. It's a good answer, because that way you can take it how you like. He's not attacking the task force, even though he easily could. He could point out that it's all right you saying they secured these doses of vaccine from Pfizer for us, but they didn't half drop the ball on the American one, did they? And but you know, that was a great answer because you can take it how you like. He's not attacking them, but he's not supporting them either. We can wait till they've actually done their work, because this task force hasn't actually done its main job yet. The vaccine's not in the country just yet. Let's examine where they are. Let's say sometime in February. Give them a good run at it. Give them a good run. Don't judge them on the first week. Wait till February. And then, you know, he said, Starmer said, look, this has to be something that we all work together on to deliver us safely over the next few months. Which is, again, is a good one, because he's like implying there that this rollout will take a few months. So when it gets to a few months' time, we're still struggling a little bit. He can say, oh, it seems to be taking a while there, Prime Minister. And this is following exactly the same pattern you may or may not notice as the start of the COVID emergency in general, or at least when Starmer first became Labour leader, which was not actually right at the start. He wasn't straight on the attack. He was like, let's work together. Obviously, Johnson didn't. Then he was able to attack. You know, it's like, well, we'll give you every chance. You know, his attitude seems to be give you enough rope and you'll hang yourself. Same thing here, probably. And at the end of the day, if the government don't manage to make a complete arse of this one, well, that's fine, because we supported you. But then he turned to the issue of public confidence in the vaccine. Again, it's not something where there should be any friction between the Conservatives and Labour on this one. Although the Conservatives are serial liars, they're not wanting to encourage anti-vaxxer nonsense. And Starmer said, look, we've got the highest regulatory standards in the world on this, and it's important that we counter dangerous disinformation on vaccines. And he said that Labour had called for legislation to counter this. He said, will the Prime Minister support this? Now, he started off by saying, well, look, we're working to tackle all kinds of disinformation on the internet, not your own, obviously. And he said, we'll be publishing a paper on online harms. Right, okay. See, my response to that would be, yeah, here's the thing, Prime Minister. See, we're calling for legislation to punish people who deliberately spread lies that prevent the take-up of this vaccine. What you're talking about is publishing a paper. In this case, you know, a government that has extremely low public confidence is regarded by even its supporters as serial liars. I'm not sure that anyone who's reading something very shiny on social media about why they shouldn't take the vaccine, that all seems very compelling, is going to be have their mind changed by a pamphlet written by Boris Johnson's government. But anyway, what he actually said, with Starmer stuff, he said, look, can I just say, please, when the government has a plan for communication on the vaccine, can he share it with the House? That way we can all give a consistent message to the country. I think that's basically Starmer's way of going, right, okay, fine, you're not going to do anything. When you do something, can you let us know? Can you actually just let us know first, please? That'd be great, because we don't want to make an arse of this, do we now? But then he turned to retail jobs. So in the last, for those who don't know, this week, on 2 consecutive days, we've had the threats to 25,000 people's jobs from the collapse of Debenhams, a department store chain, and the Arcadia group that also has little clothes shops and things like that. They were both on their arse before this, but they've now gone. And he said, look, can the Prime Minister tell the House what he's going to do to protect the jobs and pensions? Because that's always a big one. You know, when these billionaires run these companies into the ground, the pensions often disappear off. And he said, you know, caused by these closures, what are you going to do about jobs and pensions? To which, again, Johnson could have given a non-committal answer if he didn't have an answer ready. But, I mean, he's first of all said, look, we're looking at what we can do and examining the conduct of the Arcadia directors. I'll tell you now what will happen there. Same thing that always happens. The fact of the matter is they haven't broken the law. There's nothing they can do. You know, the law, you could argue, should be different, or there should be maybe some sort of insurance in place where you pay into it so that if these things collapse, it doesn't leave holes in pension funds. But the bottom line is these things have been to court before. At the end of the day, these companies, although workers are dependent upon them, it's their lives and livelihoods, the owners of them can do with them as they will. It's their property. The business is theirs to do as they want to run it into the ground. They're legally entitled to do that. Should they be? No, but they are. So obviously the government will do nothing about that. Then he talked about the funding they're providing for the high streets. Yeah, that's working out a blinder there, Boris. Then again, he tried the old party politics by saying that Starmer was attacking the economic consequences caused by COVID. And then he went on another rant about the fact that Labour didn't vote in favour of his little tier system the night before. Now, that was a bit foolish, I thought, because if I were Keir Starmer, I would have said to that, oh, I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but the last time I looked, there were more Conservative MPs voted against it than Labour MPs. Because that's true. I believe it was something like 55 Conservative MPs voted against it and 16 Labour MPs voted against it. He really should. He didn't, unfortunately. He should have said that. He should have said that. And also, you would make the point that the collapse of Arcadia and Debenhams wasn't caused by COVID. COVID may have hastened it. In fact, it undoubtedly did. But they were in deep trouble before we even knew what COVID-19 was. You know, they've been in the news as being on the brink of collapse for some time. But like I say, he didn't say that. He did bite back, though, for his sixth question. Remember, his sixth question, he knows Boris Johnson's going to grandstand. He just gets no comeback. But what he did say is, he said, look, when I abstain, I come to the House and explain. When the Prime Minister abstains, he runs away to Afghanistan and gives the taxpayer a £20,000 bill. Big laugh, of course. I still say my retort was better. He could have used both. But anyway, on the issue of jobs, he says, look, there are serious questions that need to be asked about the collapse of these businesses. And then he cited some figures of woe from the retail sector and said, look, I suspect that if we'd seen job losses on this scale in any other sector, we'd have seen action already. I mean, quite frankly, if it was in the fishing industry, we wouldn't have seen action because, do you know what? In the retail sector, just this week alone, that's more jobs threatened than exist in the entire UK fishing industry. But, you know, it's worth putting off a Brexit deal for, apparently. But anyway, Starmer then said, I urge the Prime Minister to take this seriously. Don't deflect. As well as providing emergency support, will the Prime Minister work with us, with the trades unions and the sector to bring forward a comprehensive plan to save retail jobs and to provide the sector with much greater support that it needs through this crisis? And I think there was some murmuring. He could sense the disregard coming. And then he just said as his final plea, look, these are real people, Prime Minister, with real jobs, with family, who are facing the sack. They really need to hear from you. Of course, he knew Johnson wasn't going to say anything useful at all, but that works too, just purely politically. It's a shame for the people that have been abandoned. But at the end of the day, if that's going to happen anyway, you might as well show these people exactly what sort of Prime Minister you may or may not have voted for. And there was no way of deflecting this question without looking callous. I think that's what you maybe need to do every question. He does do it quite a lot, to be fair. You know, ask a question where you just look callous if you try and deflect it. Naturally, Johnson went the whole hog. Did his usual grandstanding, you know, talking about things had nothing to do with any of the questions today. You know, just to make it crystal clear, he does not give a crap about the workers who, let's think from their point of view, they're waking up every morning not knowing if they've got a job or not. Their business has gone into administration. They could go to work and just be told, this is your last day or your last morning or whatever. That's it, done. They don't know if they have a job that day to pay the bills when they're waking up. That must be absolutely soul destroying. He doesn't care. Then on to Ian Blackford and the SNP's questions, which were a bit of dog whistling, but UK themed. He welcomed the news of the vaccine along with everyone else, but he pointed out that obviously it's still a distant prospect for millions. And then he referred to people who hadn't received, as he said, a penny of support from the government. He'd met with representatives of the excluded. These are 3 million citizens who have not had any help at all. They've fallen through the cracks from every bit of economic support the government have provided. And he said it's now costing lives. He relayed the news that in the last 10 days, 8 million people, as part of this group, 8 million people had taken their own lives. And he said, will the Prime Minister commit to looking again at the support package for these people? This should have been easy even for a lazy Prime Minister. And this is what I meant right at the start. None of these questions were really that loaded. The Prime Minister, he could have just given very easy answers. He may well have had to, you know, face a few more later on. These were easy to get through. And all Boris Johnson ever wants to do is get through the day. Even a lazy Prime Minister, all he had to do was say, yeah. I've seen Prime Ministers say yes to this question, and you know they've no intention of doing it. they just say, yeah, of course I'll look at it again. And he said he was very sorry for the people who lost their lives and their families. But it says, so easy. All you have to, you're not committing to doing anything. You're just committing to looking again. You can look at it again and decide, actually, no, we're happy that those 3 million people get sod all. Oh, and then he tried to talk about universal credit. Yeah. You try living on that. I hear you can't live on 150,000 a year, Prime Minister. You can't manage on 5 times the national average. Try living on minimum wage. Not even minimum wage. Universal credit, what we're talking about. Worse than that. But it was so easy. All he had to do was say, of course I'll look again. Yeah. But see, his answer to Starmer's last question. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about these people. Then Blackford, for his second, said, well, that's not good enough. He said, these people need help. It's been an abject failure of this UK government. The government, he said, the government have U-turned on almost everything else. Why can't they at least rethink this? And he said they haven't been offered a single ministerial meeting. Now, at this point, even I was shocked. I mean, I know this government don't give a crap, but I thought, that's ridiculous. That is actually shocking. A group representing 3 million people, that's nearly 5% of the population. And they don't warrant even a ministerial meeting. Ministers hold meetings all the time with groups they don't really want to meet to, and they just get through it and then do nothing. Happens all the time. They couldn't even be asked to do that. I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute. One of the health secretary's neighbours gets a contract for something they have no expertise in just by sending a WhatsApp message. What possible excuse is there for this? But anyway, Blackford said, again, will the Prime Minister commit to a meeting? Again, should have been a piece of piss. I mean, all right, like I've said, there was a bit of dog whistling in the old questions there, but the questions themselves were genuine. There was no need to be tripped up by them. Of course I'll rethink them, he could have said. Of course I'll arrange a meeting. He wouldn't even have to do it himself. That's why he's Prime Minister, he can delegate. I'll get a Treasury Minister to meet with you. No problem. In fact, quite frankly, if it's a group representing 3 million people, I'll meet them myself. He could have just said that. I'll meet them myself. But if he won't be committing to doing anything. Maybe cutting short one of his afternoon naps and then getting someone to write up a follow-up letter later on. Couldn't even do that. And instead, he said, we've abandoned nobody. He couldn't even continue after that point because he couldn't go ahead because of all the cries of yes, you have, just from around. And I mean, he demonstrably has abandoned them. There's nothing subjective about it. 3 million people who've not been included in any of the support packages. 3 million people who've collected together with representatives willing to meet with ministers and they can't even get a meeting. If that's not abandonment, I don't know what is. Actually, I do know. Looked it up in the dictionary. It's abandonment. But there we go. That was PMQs. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.